Hi, in this session I will be discussing batch determination in warehouse. So this is actually a part of stock removal control, and we will see how the batch determination process works in warehouse management. So this is the objective. In this session we will be discussing batch determination in warehouse management. So in case your stock is batch managed, for example, pharmaceutical industries or chemical industries or food industries, they would be typically managing their stock in batches because the shelf life or any other characteristics is important for them. So while removing the stock, we need to ascertain what is the exact characteristic which we want to, based on which we would want to pick the batches. So batch determination forms an important component of the stock removal process. So let us see how we typically set up the batch determination in warehouse management. So before we see the batch determination process in a warehouse, we need to note something that is very important here. If the batch is determined already in a preceding document, how does the system behave? So you can only use batch management in warehouse management if a batch has not already been determined or entered manually in the preceding document. That is in the sales order or the outbound delivery or the work order and so on. If a batch is already specified in a document item, the system searches for storage bins with quants of this batch during transfer order creation. The stock removal strategy of the storage type then takes secondary place. If the first in first out or the FIFO strategy, for example, is valid for the storage type, the system removes the oldest quant if there are several quants of the relevant batch. So what we're trying to understand here, that if you are already determining the batches at your SD component or the delivery document, for example, then once the batches are determined, the same batches are transferred ahead in the transfer order, and the system is going to try to pick the very same batches that have already been determined in the preceding document. So in such a case, the batch determination in a warehouse will not work or is not really required, because you're already determining the batch at a delivery document level. So here we need to take a call whether you would want to determine the batches at the document level, that is the delivery document level. So if you have a very complex criteria based on which you would want to determine the batch, maybe you have multiple different rules for maybe determination for a particular customer or a particular condition, or you have some exits in your batch determination at an SD level, then probably you might want to keep the batch determination intact over there, and then the warehouse search would try to find the same batches that you have determined already. However, if you would want to determine the batches at a transfer order level or a warehouse level, then you can use the batch determination setup procedure that is available with standard SAP, and also you can try to see if you are able to achieve the same batches which you would want to achieve or want to determine at an SD level. It depends on how the scenario is, but we will try to understand here how do we actually do, or how the system determines the batches in a warehouse. So this is basically how the batches would be determined. We have an outbound delivery here, and the outbound delivery, when processed into a transfer order for a material B5, we would want to have a batch of characteristics, say CH1. It would search in the storage type 002 and then pick the batches from there. So this is the place where batch determination happens, and the system automatically picks the batches based on the strategy that you have specified. Similarly, for the work order, we have batch determination taking place. So it could be any document, preceding document. We need only one setup. to make at the warehouse level. Of course, we have a functionality or a flexibility to choose different batch determination procedures for different movement types if we decide to go by that combination. So let us see in the system how we can set up batch determination in the warehouse. So to start with, I will be showing the batch determination with a new material. I have a new material 3131, and you can see that this is batch managed material. I would be keeping this material in storage type 001, and this is a high rack material. So let us see the stock of the material. I am in transaction LS26. So I have just done a goods receipt for 1000 quantity of this material, and we have the batches 559, 560, 561, 562, and so on. So I have around 900 quantity. I have 900 quantity with me. So if you already have batch management active in your client and you are already dealing with batches, then you may not need to do all the elaborate setup of creating a characteristics and creating a different class. But then let's say we want to have it now in the system. So I will just show you what is basically needed to create the batches in the system. So whenever you receive the material, so far we have seen that we were directly receiving the material because our material was not batch managed. So now if our material is batch managed, we need to have certain classification and characteristics for that particular material, so that when you are creating a goods receipt, the system would propose the relevant characteristic parameters, and then you can enter the characteristics during the goods receipt based on the customizing settings that we have maintained. So let us first create characteristics and class, and then try to do one single goods receipt and see the difference between a normal goods receipt and a goods receipt with batch management for that material active. So I have created a characteristics. Basically, I would want to now pick these batches based on a characteristic called concentration. So say for example, this is a chemical or something of that sort, or maybe color or a pigment. So I want this particular material to be picked on the concentration, and concentration is the characteristic. So I will create a characteristics with CT04. So right now I already have a characteristic created, which is CONC. So in characteristic, basically I define the data type, which is important. I give the description. This additional data field is important in case you are referring to some characteristics which is going to be picked from certain table. So for example, shelf life date. In that case, you need to specify the table name and the field name. For example, if it is shelf life date, expiration date, you will specify the table MCH1 and the field as a VFDAT, and likewise. So at this moment, I want to pick the concentration, which does not need this data maintenance. So I am actually done with the setting up the concentration characteristic. Let us proceed with creation of a class. So basically I have a class created. The class name is concentration. CL01 is the transaction. So I am in CL02, as you can see, and the class type is 023. So I give a description, and here I include the characteristics. Now I have only one characteristics which I am going to use. If you have multiple characteristics that you would want to maintain for that particular batch of a material, then you have to create separate characteristics. Say for example, I have one characteristic CO and C. You may have shelf life date or shelf life expiration date or anything of that sort and have multiple characteristics created. So I have created a class and included the characteristic that I have already created over here. Now this is the basic setup and does not form really the part of setup for WM batch determination process, but this is the base on which we are going to further proceed with the batch determination setup. So I am trying to demonstrate the entire end-to-end case which you would need to set up even your own example. So once we are done with the characteristic and the class, let us take one look at the material master. In the material master, now you would also want to or have to create a classification view with MM01 and then pull the characteristic that you have just created. So I have already created the classification view and then pulled the class concentration that I have created, and this class concentration would get the characteristic over here. So this classification view is important because now you are going to manage this material in batches. Also, as we were discussing about the shelf life expiration date strategy H in one of our last sessions, I was mentioning that you would have to maintain the shelf life data in the plant storage location data 1 view. So this is the data for the shelf life expiration date that we need to maintain. So once you maintain the total shelf life, whatever is the shelf life that you would want to maintain, and I have maintained the minimum remaining shelf life, so the system will propose this only if it is above 5, this material. So this data is important so that when you are doing a goods receipt for this material, the system would allow you or prompt you to enter the production date, and the system would calculate the remaining shelf life or the total shelf life of that particular material based on what you enter over here. So this is just an additional info. If you are using or want to use a shelf life expiration date, you would need to maintain this data so that you have the shelf life of that particular batch or material when it is entering your premise in the plant. So let us do one goods receipt. So here I am doing a goods receipt without a purchase order with transaction 501. Movement type 501 in transaction MB1C. I specify the batch as 501A. This is just for a demonstration of how the system would prompt you to enter the date of production, because now this material has the shelf life date maintained. So I enter any date. So after that date, the system would go into the classification view, and for this particular batch, I need to enter the value of concentration. So I enter some value, say 75. So this is the percentage for this particular batch. So this is how the system is going to change its behavior based on your setting in the material master. So now the system has what it requires. So I save this. So I posted the material, transfer order was created, and I have sent the material into the shelf and in the bin and then confirm the transfer order. Let us see how the batch looks now that we just created for that material. The transaction is MSC to N to display the batch. That for that material. Now you can see the date of manufacture and the shelf life expiration date has come up. So in case you are using a shelf life expiration date strategy, you might need this information if your material is batch managed. Let's go to classification, and we will see that the classification has the characteristic value maintained as 75. Now this is the single most important place for a batch, because based on this view the system is going to pick the batch depending on the condition type that we maintain. So if this view is not there, then probably you will have to create this view manually if at all it hasn't come up. So but it should ideally come up automatically based on your settings in the material master. Now we are done with all the master data that needs to be set up, and we are able to receive material in batches. Now we can see how to set up a batch determination for a warehouse. So what we are going to do is we are going to set up a batch determination in the warehouse such that anytime you are picking a material for delivery for movement type 601, the system should pick the batches based on the characteristics that based on the value that you maintain in the condition records. So I would want the system to pick the batches which have characteristics concentration more than say 60%. So this is my requirement. So let us start with the batch determination procedure to set up the start batch determination procedure. So we'll go in SPRO, Logistics General, Batch Management, Batch Determination and Batch Check. Condition tables, define warehouse batch. So there is a specific node for batch management, and here the required condition tables are already there that you would need, but in case you need anything extra, you would create. We would use the table 011, which allows us to specify a key combination of warehouse and movement type. So nothing to change here. We have the condition tables in place. Then we go to access sequence. In the access sequence, we have the standard access sequence WM01 and WM02. The WM02 access sequence would be required if you are using the key combination warehouse number and movement type. So we are not going to, or I am not going to maintain a new access sequence because this is what we want. And let us proceed. So most of the cases this is sufficient. If in case you need anything extra, you can create your own condition table and then include them in the access sequence. After the access sequence, we have these strategy types. So this is the place where we create our strategy. So this is the standard warehouse strategy that has been given by SAP, and you would create the way you want. So I have created a strategy ZM03, which is a duplicate of warehouse number and movement type. So now you will see that when you create the strategy, you are able to include your selection of class, which I created as concentration. So here you can see the class that we have created. We can include that, and this is the reason you would need your own condition type. So I have created a ZM03. Also, we have a sorting sequence. I have created a sorting sequence, but we will come back to this a bit later. So the strategy is needed so that it pulls the class that we have created, and then further we would also see the remaining setup. Then we have the batch search procedure definition. We go to define warehouse management batch search procedure. Here we have two procedures already defined by SAP. the WM standard search procedure and the search procedure for warehouse number and movement type. Basically, in this procedure, we are going to include the condition type that we have just created. So we have just created the condition type ZM03, which includes the class that we have created. So this is the search procedure that we have created now. So ZWM003 is the search procedure that we would create. So you remember this search procedure that we have created because this is the procedure that we will be further assigning to our combination of warehouse and the movement types. So let us go back. Next, after we have created defined the search procedure, we need to go to the last final node of assign WM search procedure. In case if you want to know how we create this search procedure, it is pretty simple. You just copy the search procedure that you would want and then simply duplicate it and give your name, the name of your choice. So for all the above steps, we have to do a similar thing and then customize it the way we want. So I am not so after this, we simply have to change the condition types ZM03 that we have created. So all the steps we have to do a similar thing, just copy the original SAP thing, condition types or the search procedure and then proceed with your own. At this time, I have already copied this particular search procedure, so the condition type, so I will not create a new one. I will just delete this search procedure. So this was just to demonstrate in case there is some difficulty in creating the search procedure or any of these nodes. Right. So after we have done or created the search procedure, let us go and finally assign the WM search procedure. So we have the options of using the key combination of a warehouse number, and we also have the key combination of a warehouse and a movement type number. I would choose this combination because this gives me a flexibility to adopt a different procedure if I need to for a different movement type. So I come to my warehouse and give the movement type 601. So this 601 is for the outbound delivery, and I assign the search procedure ZWM003 over here. Once I assign the search procedure to 601, then what is going to happen is that whenever you are creating a transfer order for an outbound delivery, which has a movement type 601, the system is going to pick this search sequence and then go in the reverse order and find the condition types that you have maintained. So once you are done with this, we have already set up the batch search procedure for the warehouse. Now we need to maintain the condition records and the sort sequence that I said that we will come back to it later. So the T code for the sort sequence is CU71, and I have created a sort sequence concentration. Basically, what the sort sequence is going to do is it gives you an opportunity to display the search results in ascending or a descending order. So now my requirement is to pick the highest concentration of batches first whenever I have a requirement. So if I choose a descending order of displaying the concentration, then I am going to pick the highest first. So this is the reason why we need a sort sequence. I have created a sort sequence with the so this is a T code with the characteristic concentration, and the name of the sort sequence is concentration itself. So easy to remember. So now we have created the sort sequence. Let us now create the condition record. The T code is LS51 and the strategy type is ZM03 that we have just created for warehouse number and movement type. With the key combination is warehouse number and movement type. We go in. Here we have to enter the movement type. I have already maintained for 601. So I keep this selection blank, which means immediate selection of batches according to selection criteria. I go to selection criteria and I maintain my criteria as anything that is above 60, value 60, which is 60%, should be selected. So this is the condition that I have put for this particular characteristics. So once I have maintained this criteria, I need to maintain the sort sequence. So I pull the sort sequence that I have just created. So this is the sort rule that I have created. Concentration, I pull it over here and it starts getting displayed over here. So this is the way we maintain the condition records. I save this. Condition record is saved. So anytime we have a transfer order created for movement type 601, this particular condition record is going to be activated, and the characteristic that we have maintained and the selection criteria that we have maintained, that is above 60%, the system is going to use that selection criteria and pick the batches about 60% concentration. So I have a delivery for material 3131B for quantity 600. Let us see if we have enough material with the selection criteria that we specified. We go to creation of transfer order. So we are on the screen of creation of transfer order, and we will see that the moment we hit enter, the batch determination starts taking place in the background. So the batch determination is taking place and has happened in the background. So at this stage, we must understand that the system has already selected some batches in the background and probably saved them in an internal table. And once we go ahead with this, the system will show us the proposed batches. Now the system has picked up the batch 565 from the bin 010801, and it is going to the destination bin in 916. We can check the displayed, we can display the batches or the batch determination that has happened here. And here we can see that the batches have been sorted and arranged in the descending order of the concentration. This is exactly how we had desired that we would want to pick the batch with the highest density, highest concentration first. So we can see the selection criteria here that we have maintained, and for each individual batch that is selected, we know, or we can see the characteristics based on which it was selected and the selection criteria that we have maintained. This is the strategy info. This is the analysis for batch determination. The strategy info typically gives us all the information regarding the batch determination and the sorting rule. Here we have the classification for the first line item, which we can also check with a double click. So I will continue with this, and the system has selected all the batches based on the criteria that we have maintained. So I will create this transfer order. So thus we have created a transfer order using batch determination in WM. So similar to the batch determination that we saw right now, if we want to do a batch determination for any other movement type, we can do so. For example, goods issue for any other movement type. So you can choose the combination of warehouse and the movement type of your choice and then do the batch determination. Hi. In this session, I will just give you some additional information regarding batch classification and characteristics. In our earlier example, when we discussed the topic of batch determination set up in a warehouse, we created a characteristic CO and C, which was concentration as per our requirement. But you could also use standard characteristics set up or given by SAP. For example, if you want to have a selection criteria based on shelf life expiration date or the remaining shelf life, then SAP provides you standard characteristics to use. So let us see some of the standard characteristics. Let us see a shelf life expiration date characteristic. So LOBM_VFDAT is the characteristic, and you can use it as is in your class, or you can copy this and create a new characteristic of your own. So if I want to use the same characteristics, you can see this comes from the table MCH1 and the field name is VFDAT, and this is in the date format. So if you want to create a class and a selection criteria which would sort your batches based on the shelf life expiration date, then you would need to create a class. For example, say I am creating a class search1, and let's say I want to search the batches based on shelf life. You would need to include the characteristic here. You can have more than one characteristic as per your business requirement over here, and the same would go in the batch classification. Once you create a class, all you need to do is extend your material to this class. So once you have this class in place, then you cannot change the class in the material. So be sure what you exactly want and what criteria you would want to have your material sorted on. If your client is already managing the material in batches, then chances are that you will already have a class created. In that class, you have a chance to add your characteristic and create your selection criteria. But if the characteristic is not there and you would want to have some unique characteristics, you can still add that in the available class. But you have to make sure that the material that is already created in the plant, the batches for that material will not have the characteristics maintained already. So you would have to make sure that the characteristics, if newly created, then has to be maintained. If you already have a class and a characteristics in place, then you need not do anything over here. All you need to do is include your class. I have created a class search. You have to include a class search in the condition type, and then this is applicable to the warehouse. So it all depends on your existing scenario, and if you want to create a new class, then probably it may not be allowed because the material is already there existing. If you want to create a new characteristics, you can very well create the characteristics, but then make sure that the material that is already there, the batches that are already there in the system, are updated with the values that are supposed to be in the characteristics. Rest everything in the batch determination remains the same. The only main difference is the class and the characteristics and the sorting criteria. Also, there is one important point to note here, that if you are using something called shelf life expiration date as a selection criteria, you can very well consider in having a strategy H in place, because it would give you almost the same results or exactly the same results, because the shelf life expiration date strategy, that is the H strategy for stock removal, is all about selecting the material based on the shelf life. So this is all I wanted to mention about creating a new characteristic and about the options available in SAP. So as far as possible, we uh, use the standard characteristics that are given, and if we need something extra, we can do our own characteristics.